Hi guys, this is gsno.com and I'm here with the Huawei P Smart 2021. Some people also know it as the Huawei Y7A. It's a rebranded version for Europe, this one here, the P Smart 2021. And we're dealing here with a quad camera, large battery, mid-range handset in a beautiful green hue. It's priced as low as $150 and it's time for its full review. So first of all, the design. It's quite a large handset with a pretty big diagonal. It's got thick bezels, especially the chin here, and also it's made of plastic. We have here the cute green hue. There are also other hues like blush gold and midnight black. It measures 9.3 millimeters in thickness and weighs 206 grams. I would say that the grip is quite okay, and it's not a slippery device, and also its buttons are quite comfy on this side. The back side will draw quite a bit of fingerprint and grease, so you may find yourselves wiping it quite often. And also the camera doesn't protrude, so a comfy phone, but a case would be needed. I should also mention that the screen already has applied a protective layer. I don't know if you can see it, but that should help with the potential scratches. Now, as far as the display is concerned, what you're seeing here is a 6.67 inch display of the IPS LCD variety, and the resolution is 2400 over 1080 pixels. It's got a 20:9 aspect and a center punch hole at the top side of the display. Now, of course, you want to see what the screen is offering here when it comes to video playback, and we got you covered. This is a typical video sample, and let's see how it performs. Okay, so what we're getting here are a set of pretty well calibrated colors, as you probably expected already from an IPS LCD. Also, I would say rather wide view angles. Decent brightness, but rather indoors than outdoors, where the contrast is definitely not enough to make the screen legible. And that's pretty much it. The black isn't deep, obviously, it's an IPS LCD, once again not an AMOLED, and the pixels are of the RGB stripes arrangement variety. We also did a measurement of the brightness, and this is what we achieved. 339 lux units, which is definitely not very impressive. In general, 400 lux is our threshold. So basically with this value here, we're able to beat, well, older phones, HTC U12 Plus, the first Zenfone Max, and the Redmi 9C NFC. We stayed below the Huawei P40 Lite, Xiaomi Mi A2 Lite, and the Redmi Note 8T, if you really want to keep things in the cheaper spectrum. If you want to tweak the screen experience, you can go here, and you got brightness, automatic, there's color mode and temperature, which can be set to normal or vivid, and also color temperature can be default, warm or cool. There's eye comfort, there's an ebook mode, there's a dark mode, text and display size, and the screen resolution can be set to smart, or you can set it to full HD or, well, lower, as you saw before. Okay, that's that, and that's it. So now we go further and see what else this device has to offer. For starters, the CPU, what we're dealing here is a Kirin. It's the Kirin 710A, and it's a 14 nanometer processor, this one here, an octa-core chip, accompanied by 4 gigs of RAM, and at the same time you're also getting 128 gigabytes of storage, which is actually not that bad to have on a device, plus microSD with a dedicated slot. Once again, not a bad feature to have. I would say the device is actually above my expectations. I'm talking about the fact it's pretty snappy, so there was no lag no matter what I did and what I played, install or updated. I didn't encounter any trace of lag, so that's pretty cool. And we also have benchmarks. Let's try Antutu 8. This is the score we achieved, just above the Samsung Galaxy A41 and Motorola One Macro, while at the same time staying below the Oppo A72 and the battery phone Moto G8 Power. When it comes to the Geekbench 5 test, here we are with the multi-core sub-test. We're just above the Oppo A72 and the Galaxy A51, which is a pretty nice surprise, but below the Nokia 7.2 and the Xperia 10 Mark II, also below the Redmi Note 8T. Okay, now we go further to the GPU test. As you can see here, I would say a decent score, just above the Xiaomi Mi A3 and Redmi Note 8T, while we are still below the Moto G8 Power and Galaxy A41. It's okay for this price range, below $200. And if you're wondering about the temperature, well, we also have a test for that. Okay, so in benchmarks, we achieved 37.7 degrees Celsius, so there's definitely no overheating here. And in games we achieved 36.2 degrees Celsius, so once again we're not reaching the 40-degree threshold, which usually is a code for overheating. Okay, so we have reached the battery, which is a pretty important part of the phone. I would say it's actually one of its selling points. It's a 5000 mAh battery, which charges via USB-C 2.0 at 22.5 watts. Okay, so as usual, we do 2 core tests, and those involve video playback. As you can see here, we achieved 14 hours and 36 minutes, which is actually not bad. It beats the Huawei P40 Lite 5G, Galaxy A51 and Galaxy A41. Stays below the regular Huawei P40 Lite and below the Xiaomi Redmi 9C NFC, and also Galaxy A50, just in case you're wondering. When it comes to continuous usage, this is the result we achieved. 10 hours and 45 minutes. It's pretty solid. It beats Motorola One Action, Nokia 8.1, Galaxy A40 and Realme 6. It's below the Redmi 9C NFC and the Redmi Note 8T from last year, also the very cheap Galaxy A20e. The charging is, I would say, decent at 1 hour and 33 minutes. I've seen much worse, to be honest, than many mid-range phones, and after 30 minutes you're 45%, so you should be good to go for about a day of use, or at least 3/4 of a day. Okay, and we also have power saving features like the performance mode, power save mode and ultra power save mode, but more about that in the text review. On the acoustics front, as you can see, we have an audio jack here and also a singular speaker, which luckily we will not cover in landscape mode. And at the same time, let's see what else. We got this music player here, which can also double as a way to purchase tunes. And we have the high-stand area where we can apply sound effects, which are basically applied more with headphones rather than typical listening. So that's what a tune sounds like on this device. Okay, so I would go ahead and say it's pretty loud and at the same time a decent level of bass, which I wasn't expecting. Pretty good high notes and an overall solid sound. The loudness is the one that encompasses the whole plethora of impressions. Now, as far as the volume itself is concerned, we have a decibel meter, which shows us an impressive result for the acoustic sample test, 90.6 decibels, not bad. Above the Huawei Nova 5T, a Realme 6 and Galaxy A51, below Huawei P40 Lite 5G and the Xiaomi Mi A3. In gaming, things are just okay. In general, we're happy with 100 decibels. Here we have to be happy with 97.1 decibels. Superior to the Samsung Galaxy A70 and Redmi Note 8T, inferior to the Xiaomi Mi A3 and Galaxy A50. I should probably mention that we're also getting FM radio, just so you know. Now on the camera front, you can already see this big cutout here in the center of the facade, 8 megapixel selfie camera, while at the back side things get a bit more interesting. There's a main 48 megapixel AI camera as the core of the experience. It combines 4 pixels in one, accompanied by an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera, so 48 megapixel main, 8 megapixel ultra-wide, 2 megapixel macro, and 2 megapixel bokeh. It's obvious that these two little fellows here are the 2 megapixel shooters. Okay, there's the LED flash, and we do not have 4K capture. We do have AI technology. We have a super macro mode, panorama, HDR, and we also have a night mode, which is nice to see on a device in this price range. Okay, so we go to the gallery now, and I think we have quite a few shots. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the daytime photos, probably one of the last sunny days of 2020. It's almost the winter time here. Now the colors are a bit more muted than usual. I would say some people will call them more realistic, other people will want them to be more vivid. I would say they're pretty decently well calibrated, particularly the yellow leaves of the trees and the reds of the toys in the park that I captured. Those are the best highlights of the experience. Now, in general, I was happy with the clarity and the level of details, particularly if you really trigger the 48 megapixel picture mode, which you can trigger. The default is 12 megapixels. You can take full 48 megapixel shots. The bokeh is actually applied pretty well. So this is the regular shot, and then we got up close and this statue is very well separated from the background, so score 1 for the bokeh. Things get a bit tougher when you're capturing landscapes because there's not much detail. If you really want detail, go for the ultra wide or the panorama or the 40 megapixel, otherwise not that much detail. And speaking of which, this is supposed to be the regular shot, and here we should also have the ultra wide shot, which is probably this one. So regular and ultra wide, which is a bit softer on the details on account of the lower resolution. Okay, we go further, capturing some beautiful colors of the fall, this rusty red of the trees. And speaking of colors, even more here. Now this is an area where I was actually surprised. So regular colors, and the ultra wide does not spoil the colors, something you don't see every day, so that's a bonus. I struggled quite a bit to take some close-ups, but before that let's talk about the selfies. I mean, they're not bad, the focus isn't half bad as expected. I mean, it's a bit better than on the Galaxy A50 from last year, and quite a few mid-range phones. The texture of the face is okay, the clarity, the expression, and even the background is enough well focused to keep us happy. And if you really want it to shine, you probably should activate the bokeh mode, which did some weird cut here at the top of my head, but I was actually applying some of the cool options like circles, hearts and all that. But in general, it separates pretty well your visage from the background. Okay, now I was mentioning something about the close-ups. I actually struggled with the super macro mode. This is the best I could achieve. Actually, this is the best I could achieve. So you take about 4 or 5 attempts before you're really getting something usable. Very nice shots of flowers, details, colors, texture, everything makes me happy here. But once again, struggling to pull off a macro, and I mean a real macro. But in the end, you should get a pretty decent result. Okay, so overall the experience felt like the Redmi Note 8T and the Xiaomi Mi A3, if you remember them. The only missing areas, the details of the ultra wide, the hit and miss aspect of the macro, and some of the colors, only some of the colors. That's the daytime experience. Now let's see the low light photos, because that's a more important aspect. So first things first, we did not capture a large quantity of light as expected from a phone that costs $150. But the thing that blew me away was the night mode. As you can see, it does wonders, and if you really hold the phone steady, you're in for a surprise. So the regular shots are just okay, some of the halos are too big, but when you activate the night mode, it's from a different league. Of course, the ultra wide shots are poor, they're very blurry, and meeting the light doesn't do them good. So as you can see, there are problems here in the light lit up logo, but when you use the night mode, things are solved. So any problem you're going to have after the sunset with your phone, with this phone, you just press the night mode and you should be all set. People will believe you have a handset which is 4 or 5 times pricier than this one. Okay, so that covers it. It's definitely better than many or quite a few 2019 mid-range phones. Okay, so now let's talk about the video, and luckily we have a video section here. The biggest surprise of them all was, to be honest, the selfie video. Wearing a mask as I should, pretty nice focus, pretty good details, nice expression of the face, all the colors are fine, even the sky, so actually not that bad, way above my expectations. Now, in the underwhelming section, well, it's got to be the stabilization, which, to be honest, there's no stabilization here advertised, no optical one. The electronic one also is not exactly pushed forward, so rather modest stabilization, but at least you're not losing focus, so there's that. Okay, and if you want more colors, we have this one here. This one is a bit too white for my taste, it's a bit overexposed. And speaking of exposure, sometimes when you're quickly changing angles, the exposure changes violently and increases the contrast quite a bit. The hues are okay, the reds and the blues, I'm fine with that. As you can see, things got a bit darker, as I mentioned before, and we also have more cinematic videos. Details are modest, you can just shoot full HD, no trace of 4K, but for a mid-range phone, I would say things are pretty decent. Make sure you get your proper bearings and let the exposure do its job slowly. Don't rush it, don't pan too fast. That's my advice. Okay, so let's also cover the low light capture. As I said before, in the daytime we're on par with the Redmi 8 series, and in the nighttime it's actually not that bad. The image doesn't flicker as much as I expected when walking around. Of course, the stabilization doesn't do wonders, but it's a bit above my modest expectations. And especially the color is nice. It's better than I've seen on the Galaxy A series from last year and even some of this year's models. Comparable with the Galaxy A31 and A41 even. And the zoom was actually surprising. Okay, so that's that camera wise. I think it's time to discuss other things, like for example connectivity. We start off with the audio jack, a microphone next to it, USB-C 2.0 port, and then we proceed to other things like Wi-Fi BGN. There's Bluetooth 5.1, there's Wi-Fi Direct, there's GPS, GLONASS and BDS. There's no NFC here, and the calls were pretty loud and clear. Now, if you want to talk about connectivity, I feel we should actually go to the screenshots, because we did some speed tests and this is what came out. As you can probably tell already, we're not using the 5 GHz band, just the 2.4 GHz, and achieved on Wi-Fi only a modest 51.6 MB/s download and 24.3 MB/s upload. 4G was a bit better, 89.7 download and 45.7 upload. So those are fine results, but if you're only gunning for a phone that's below $200, otherwise they wouldn't be acceptable. On the software front, you've seen this story before, so we're using Android 10 with EMUI 10.1.1 on top. We have this very useful window here with shortcuts, with some of the news you may be interested in. It actually guessed my interesting points, my passions. Okay, aside from that, you don't have Play Store and Google services, but you do have an app gallery, which is constantly evolving and getting new titles. And aside from the app gallery, you also have, there's Petal Search, which is basically a Google replacement. It serves you news, points of interest, apps, images, gifts. It can even handle your flights and show you the flight schedule. It's an aggregator of the sources you can use to install some of the most popular apps. Aside from that, the experience is typical Android. As you can see, we have this carousel here of windows for multitasking. You can also perform a floating window or a split screen, and if you use this little thingy, you should be able to trigger this bar, which lets you trigger once again floating windows above the split screen for an extra level of multitasking. Pinch the screen and you're treated with the wallpaper, widgets, transition, home screen settings. As you can see, I have activated the app drawer. By default it's not activated, and if you swipe down, there's a clean area of notifications and quick settings, pretty clean and well organized. This is the settings area, nothing out of the ordinary, all the useful features related to security, sound, display, apps, battery, storage, and digital balance and a Huawei Assistant. Speaking of security, you can either opt for the side-placed fingerprint scanner, which is very fast, or a combo of it and the face unlock, which is even faster, and I'm pretty impressed by this. Now the pre-installed apps, there's quite a few of them, but the most useful one is this, the optimizer. And we also have the health, where you can use to sync up your Huawei watches and at the same time perform your firmware updates and see your steps, your other things you did, your heart rate, your stress level, your breathing, synced up from your bracelet or your watch. Okay, I feel that this is about it. We've covered everything there is to cover. Other pre-installed apps, where there's quite a few of them, but most of them are pretty useful. Okay, so it's time to go to the end of the review, the conclusion, and as I do that, I'm going to play a bit of the new Conor McGregor game. It was available exclusively on the Huawei AppGallery. It's called Dystopia with a Y, and let's talk about the pros and cons. This is Conor McGregor, by the way. On the pro side, the device comes in pretty cute colors. This is a cute looking color, and at the same time it's a comfy handset. It's got a good battery. One of the selling points is probably the battery life. And I should probably mention that we also have a fast fingerprint unlock and also fast face unlock. The speaker is loud, the one at the bottom. The pictures and videos, I would put them under the OK field, so there's that. They're quite okay. They're delivering a decent quality, especially the selfies and the regular shots, not the macro ultra wide ones. I should also mention that the selfie video was a pleasant surprise, as was the night capture with the night mode. We have an audio jack, we have a microSD card slot, we have FM radio, and Those are the pros. Now on the cons side, the screen isn't very bright. I would also have to say that we don't have 4K video capture. The video capture in general was a bit on the shaky side of things. And okay, we're doing upgrades while we're talking. This is Conor McGregor once again. So on the cons side, not a very bright screen, no 4K video capture, shaky videos, no Wi-Fi dual band, and the CPU is a bit old for nowadays. That's something to mention. In the end, the definition of the phone is that it's a pretty okay device for $150. The things that surprised me the most can be summed up easily: the comfort of the design, the selfie video, the night mode, and the absolute lack of lag. So you may do some casual gaming here and there, you're going to focus on the selfies and maybe showing off the beautiful color of the handset. Not a bad multitasker also. And of course, there's the battery. This is it from gsn.com. Hope I helped you decide which phone to buy in this Black Friday season. It's a pretty cheap phone for sure, but it doesn't skimp on some of the important aspects. This is it from us. Bye bye.